In this lecture, we will examine the impact globalization has on cultures. This is important to geographers to understand how different cultural activities operate throughout the world. Not only does globalization have an economic impact on the world, there is also a cultural component which impacts our popular culture. Popular culture is the practices, attitudes, and preferences held in common by large numbers of people and considered to be mainstream and is heavily influenced by mass media. In Chapter 1, hierarchical diffusion was discussed, where spatial diffusion happens in a top-down or rank order manner. Walmart provides a rare example of a company that expanded through reverse hierarchical diffusion, growing from a single small-town location to a multinational corporation with more than 10,000 stores in 27 countries. During the first years after the company's founding, new stores opened in other nearby small-town locations in the region. It was not until the late 1980s and 1990s that new stores concentrated on the larger markets associated with major metropolitan areas. There are three key ideas that address the cultural impacts of globalization: homogenization, polarization, and glocalization. Homogenization states that cultures start to blend and become more alike because of globalization. In other words, we begin to lose our unique diversity. There are a few terms that were coined out of globalization. The first one is placelessness. Placelessness was developed by Edward Ralph in the 1970s before the term globalization was used. He noticed that we were losing our unique character and beginning to increase our standardization of places and cultural landscapes. In other words, different places began taking on similar qualities across the board and began to look less unique. The second is geography of nowhere. This term was coined by writer and cultural critic James Howard Kunstler when he noticed that the prevalence in the cookie-cutter residential subdivisions we see everywhere, that we were becoming the standard in the American landscape. The third is Mcdonaldization, which refers to the standardization of eating habits, such as eating fast food out of paper wrappers, eaten on the run. The fourth is colonization, which implies that the dominance of multinational corporations creates a set of power relations similar to those that exist between country and its colonies, producing a kind of imperialism. An example of this was a Starbucks located on the grounds of the Imperial Palace, an important Chinese cultural site in Beijing, and it was viewed by the Chinese as cultural imperialism. Many locals protested this Western chain and it was forced to close. The fifth term is Americanization. This term is used to explain the spatial diffusion of American brands, values, and attitudes throughout the world. As an example, the photo shows the presence of American companies in Australia. The second idea is polarization, which refers to the increased awareness of socio-cultural identity and that globalization tends to fragment people and trigger social disorder and instability. In other words, globalization has created a lot more cultural tension and has polarized people. For example, identity wars have erupted in places like the breakup of Yugoslavia, Sudan and Africa, etc. Second, global terrorism is on the rise. What was 9/11 about? In part, the Al-Qaeda didn't like our Western values. And lastly, cross-border criminal networks are on the rise. Polarization has also sparked the idea of neo-localism, a term used to describe a renewed interest in sustaining and promoting the uniqueness of place. The photo to the left shows how building codes in Santa Fe, New Mexico are maintaining and favor the area's Pueblo revival architectural style. And the photo to the right shows that not only do beliefs, practices, and products flow from the Western world to other parts of the world, but also the other way around. Japanese anime from animation and costume role-playing of anime characters have become very popular in North America, Europe, and Australia. The third is glocalization, which is the interaction and blending of local and global forces, and therefore both are changed in the process. The photo shows a portion of a McDonald's menu in India, where cows are sacred. Hindus and Muslims also avoid consuming pork, and therefore the menu often features the McVeggie, a beefless burger, the chicken Maharaja Mac, and a variety of other vegetarian and non-vegetarian options, but no beef or pork products. Please pause the video and answer the following. Does the impacts of globalization hinder or help us become more harmonious with each other around the world, or both? Pick a side and defend your position using terminology and concepts from the lecture. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer.